Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Tokyo Express operation. This is the second week of the In the Name of Tomorrow event, which as a reminder is where you can get yourself San Diego completely for free. I'll be looking at that ship more in depth soon, don't you worry, but it's a very fun Tier 8 premium that you can just earn by playing the game. This is such an amazing event, and I'm so glad that Wargaming has put so much effort into it. Not just these special operations dedicated to this event, but also some of the UI elements, the extra video clips that they've added, animated through. This is a really cool event, and Wargaming has done a great job. And I have some great news surrounding some apprehensions that I talked about at the end of the first video on the Arctic Convoy. I was worried that these stars would only affect each operations week, and I thought that maybe the Arctic Convoy would be the only event, the only operation that you could do the first episode stars in. I was worried that they were tied 1-to-1, the first operation with the first episode, second operation with the second episode. But now we know that is not the case. This is very, very good news. This makes this event even better. If you missed the first week, it doesn't matter. Just start playing this operation and you'll continue to gain progress on that first episode from stars you earn in this Tokyo Express event. It doesn't even matter if you miss the first several weeks. All that matters is that these operations, this In the Name of Tomorrow event is going on, and by the looks of things, it's up to September 17th, at least on the NA server. As long as it's available for you to play through these 3 different operations, you can just be earning stars towards your San Diego. This is so cool, and I'm so glad it works that way, and it's not some weird thing where each episode is tied to only one specific operation. It was maybe foolish of me to assume that that would be the case, given now that I know it's not the case. Reading back through how they describe these operations, it does make sense that all that matters is you're starting at episode 1, and it doesn't matter the operation you play, just earning stars is all that matters. But Wargaming's had a few issues in the past with communicating these things, so I was a little bit rightfully concerned, I think. I'm glad, though, that I was proven wrong, because it just makes this event so much better. Now let's start talking about strategy and how to play this one. Overall, I found this one a lot easier. Even though I lost one of them, completely failed, didn't get any stars out of it, I found it overall a lot easier to play because there's less coordination with your team required. I think that here it's just about spawning in and going and dealing with the red targets. That seems to be about it. It's a little more complicated than that. Certainly some of these secondary tasks in particular are a little bit tricky to guarantee. Certainly dealing with a nearly 200k HP Musashi at the end of the battle and try to take that down in like 3 minutes, that's not so easy. Perhaps that's where a battleship can come through on a broadside. That's really the only value I found a battleship brings. In fact, I think battleship is the worst class you could possibly bring to this because they're just so slow. The idea behind this event is you need to be getting to the enemy target locations. There's going to be forts that you need to destroy, or there are going to be destroyers that are carrying some special cargo that are just targets that need to be dealt with. And a battleship is just too slow to get around the map. You're limited to American ships, Dutch ships, and Commonwealth ships here. Massachusetts, obviously the best option for battleship. At least here we do have some DPM to deal with those secondary targets. A lot of destroyers in this one that you're going to be fighting. A lot of lower tier cruisers you're going to be fighting. Overall, DPM matters more here. The reason battleships were so good in Arctic Convoy was that you could push up middle pretty early on and still get some tanking that was required towards that late game. Here, though, I don't find that is required nearly as much. Much more value in destroyers getting out there, spotting cruisers for DPM. Now, I did want to show you, I love the visuals here, the night battles, but if you find it too dark, just go into your settings and you can turn up the gamma. Look at that. Now you can see everything fairly easily. Personally, I wanted to play it with the night mode enabled, I guess. Apologies if it's a little dark on video, but I did enjoy playing through this scenario in the night battle theme. It was a different experience, and I enjoyed that. That's something that's been so great here about these new operations. They're unique, they're new experiences. You don't have to play them for too long to get these stars done, and they didn't overstay their welcome. I definitely enjoyed myself here. Now notice, I'm actually getting spotted here. So in these night battles, there are flares that are going to spot your ship for the entire enemy team to see. Pretty bad on its own, but also when you look at those secondary tasks, one of them is to ensure at least one of the ships you brought into this flight never got spotted by those flares. It's a little awkward to guarantee that, I gotta say. You gotta really be keeping track of that. Now, in this one, as a DD, I do lose my progress there. Fortunately, my teammates should pick up the slack there. As a destroyer, I do think you generally want to be someone who loses that, because these destroyers, these targets of opportunity, they actually drop buffs for your team. And we'll see a little later on, one of the reasons I think I failed entirely in one of my attempts at this operation was that we didn't pick up any buffs at all. It's a heal buff. What is missing from so many of these mid-tier cruisers? Yes, it's heals. AP into these coastal batteries is extremely good. At longer ranges, destroyer guns, also Atlanta guns, can't get through it. So at closer range, that's where you want to be as a DD. As well as it seemed like I got underneath the coastal battery guns. Very interesting there that he wasn't able to shoot at me, or at least the AI there wasn't. Now this DD goes down. This is one of our primary tasks. You need to destroy 4 of them. They're going to be split up randomly amongst these targets on the minimap that you can see. And now they drop that heal. But notice they also drop a flare. Any ship that goes down actually will light up the entire water around it. And that's because of an oil spill that's on fire, I guess, is the justification. But it is worth noting that to get this heal buff, you have to sacrifice your ship's progress towards that secondary task of remaining out of that illuminated area. It's important that some of your teammates do that. Not all of them, otherwise again you lose. But it's really important that someone does that to gain these buffs, because having constant passive healing helps you so much towards the mid and late game, where you can get overwhelmed by enemy cruisers, destroyers, and most importantly, that Musashi. That Musashi is very, very difficult to deal with. Now, I also want you to realize that it's not just the enemy target ships that are going to drop that oil spill. It's all ships. So our anchorage there actually loses progress towards that secondary task because the enemy cruiser died too close to him. Something to consider there also is that destroyers seem to have a 2-kilometer radius circle that they'll drop that will illuminate all of the ships around them. And cruisers seem to have a 3-kilometer. Battleships also seem to have a 4 or 5-kilometer radius. That one didn't happen very often, but you can see that in a little bit, that one of our battleships will go down, and I will get spotted because of that. As a DD, I want to be rushing forward for these objectives. It's hard to spot some of these destroyers, I gotta say. You gotta get within 3.5 kilometers, 4 kilometers of some of these targeted DDs. And maybe you think you should just run a radar cruiser like a Cleveland or Atlanta, spot them easily. I found it very inconsistent in when it would spot those DDs. Maybe that was just some of the games where it was coastal batteries and not the destroyers there. But it is worth noting that it's a little better to just go proxy spot them with a destroyer. You don't want too many DDs in this. Again, there are just so many lower tier cruisers and DDs spawning that you really do want cruiser backup. In this case, our anchorage. It's got pretty good armor piercing, I think we can say that. And so these light cruisers, these lower tier cruisers, they take a lot of damage from that AP. Cleveland being the rental ship here is actually amazing. I think in the first operation, it was Le Glacier or something like that. Not a great pick. It's all right. But in this case, getting a Cleveland is pretty much best in class, like best cruiser you can take, one of the best cruisers you can take. Kidd, I think, is the best destroyer you can take. Battleship obviously is going to be Massachusetts, but you don't need to bring a battleship to win these engagements. In fact, a lot of the time, it's going to go a lot easier if you bring a lot of cruisers and maybe a couple destroyers. Overall, I think Kidd is the best DD because you have extra healing. Our healing is going to matter from the extra buffs we're getting. That's why I'm trying to go get this Kagero. I'm able to play aggressive against this Aoba, but the extra heals that we gain on this ship allow me to play so much more aggressive, going after these objectives early before the Musashi can get into a position to defend them. Because that was something else I noticed. The Musashi spawns seemingly from E1 all the way down the 1 line south to the J line, and then out to J8 or 9. Sometimes it can spawn in that corner as well. So for a battleship, it's great to go after the enemy battleship, the Musashi at the end, find its broadside and do well. But you can see where the lack of speed becomes a bit of an issue. You don't know where that battleship, that Musashi, is going to spawn. It could spawn all the way in either corner of the map, basically. So how's a battleship going to guarantee good value there? it's much better to run a cruiser or DD that can get around the map so much quicker. Burning down the Musashi is not a big deal either. Again, fires are percentage based, so we're able to do very good damage to him. The other thing to talk about is destroyers are just better tanks of the Musashi. I died a lot to this Musashi while running cruiser, by the way. I'll show you that in a little bit when we get to the cruiser games. But DD, it actually baits the Musashi into swapping over to high explosive. And while it seems like the bot Musashi has some buff dispersion parameters compared to standard Musashi, at least when I'm playing it feels like that, it's really good to be blocking the Musashi from shooting AP into your squishy cruisers. Did you notice that as well when he shot me there that second time? He basically dropped a flare on top of my ship. You also have to watch out for that too. If you're someone who hasn't been spotted yet by those flares, don't get too close to the Musashi. I don't know what actually procs the Musashi to drop a flare on your ship in particular, but there's no dodging it if it decides to drop a flare on you. So be aware of that. I don't know what the range is. I don't know whether if it's the target it's focusing, not sure. But in this case, it doesn't matter too much as we've already been spotted by those flares because I wanted to get those heal buffs. I did not realize Musashi back turret was looking here, so I thought I was gonna die. But guess what? We got those heal buffs, and that's just barely going to keep me alive. The AP into broadside Musashi is going to do some great work here. And notice how close our cruisers are able to get without taking any damage from him. You're a bit of the bet. You're kind of the best tank for your team when you're playing a DD like this one. So there we go. We managed to get ourselves a nice victory here with the Destroyer. I had the most fun playing Destroyer as well, playing Kid, just to be able to run at the enemy bots and objectives and get into the action quickly. Maybe that's also why we got through so many stars so quickly, is that this battle seemed to be a little bit quicker than the Arctic Convoy mission. But a decent result regardless. Although you may have noticed that I got very close to that Musashi and been wondering, didn't you fail some missions that way? Well, yes, we'll get on to that in a little bit. There's some alternative secondary tasks to deal with, and one of them is that you can't get within 5 kilometers of the Musashi. Fortunately, though, there's no timer then. It seems like either you have a timer to defeat the Musashi, or you have to stay outside of 5 kilometers of it. That seems to be one of those secondary tasks. Now, I also wanted to talk about smokes interacting with these flares. If you smoke up and you're firing your guns out of your smoke or in your smoke, while you're spotted or potentially inside one of these flares that the enemy will drop, you're not getting your usual smoke detect. You're getting much worse. I think it doubles it, maybe? I'm not sure what exactly high to normal smoke detect is, but here it would be 4.2. If there was enemy ship within 4.2, yeah, that would be pretty bad. I got myself into quite the trouble here. Musashi launches another flare onto us. That's the only reason this flare appeared, by the way, on top of my ship. Otherwise, I would have been fine. Look at our detect. It went out to 17.6. I don't know how these flares interact with our detection, but be aware, it's pretty bad, especially if you get pretty low HP on some of these destroyers. So here, I'm undetected in my smoke, but our detection shows 12.3 right now on the minimap. So if I shoot my guns, I actually get spotted still, even though earlier it showed 4.2 as my smoke fire. It's confusing, okay? I don't know what is going on here. Maybe there's some doubling up of this interaction because there's stacking of flares. Maybe the flares that the Musashi drops on you are different. I don't know. But it is worth noting that you don't necessarily want to be just sitting inside these flares overall. Now moving on to the game I lost, okay? I was admittedly trolling with playing Bryheit. And a little bug here where I can't even see the boxes of the airstrikes. I wanted to see what the 30-second airstrikes would be like. This ship has essentially no utility, no DPM. And against small destroyers, small lower tier cruisers, probably not the best idea to bring a ship focused on airstrikes. So I did not do the best here. But what I do want you to realize is our comp was not the best either. We had 4 battleships in this one. Arkansas is a little bit slow as well, so trying to deal with that. Arkansas, I think, went down towards the 910 line, H910, somewhere in there, to hopefully deal with the enemy Musashi. And guess where the Musashi spawned? The exact opposite side of the map. That's where I think some battleships might not be so good. We also just lost our Constellation, unfortunately. And look at that massive radius of a flare that he dropped. Your teammates, when they go down, also drop that oil spill that lights on. It's an oil spill when your ship goes down. It's not a flare. Maybe that's the difference. Hold on. Maybe that's the difference between the smoke, fire, and concealment changes. Okay, speculating. Regardless, I did want to just mention that as something that could be impacting you when your teammates go down next to you. And yes, Musashi, very dangerous. I couldn't go dark there because, again, he dropped a flare. I was desperately trying to get to that last objective. Unfortunately, we did go down there. Musashi is terrifying into some of these cruisers. Playing Atlanta, maybe we can do the broadside tech, right? Well, we're going to see that maybe isn't the best idea here. Overall, it's not too bad to complete some of these operations. I only failed one entirely, and that was that last one I showed you when I was trolling, and we had a ton of battleships. The rental being a Cleveland is very, very good. It means anybody who's taking rentals into this is going to be bringing one of the best options possible. And if you're playing this on your own, trying to solo queue, don't bring a battleship, even though Massachusetts is available. I know. Trust me, I know. It's just not as good as these cruisers are for this operation. And at the very end here, you probably shouldn't be opening up at 6 kilometers from a Musashi. I tried the broadside tech, did not work in this case. And then I was thinking maybe I would have enough reaction to actually do a slowdown and turn away. But no, he's just too close, right? So we are going to go down here. Fortunately, my teammates are going to clutch this one out. So we're still going to get a victory. Even if you don't get all 5 stars, I don't think it's too bad to actually get yourself 3 or 4 stars. Overall, that seems to be the impression, at least on the first day of this operation. Notice our Atlanta, though, about to go down. He's going to drop an oil slick that's also going to get our Massachusetts spotted. Those were the last 2 players that were not illuminated. So our Atlanta going down there actually caused us to fail that one with a bit of a double whammy there. Not their fault, because Musashi is, well, pretty terrifying into cruisers, okay? That's why having a DD to bait out a bunch of HE salvos into him that he can just dodge is so powerful as a pseudo-tank role. So we did only get 4 stars out of this one, but still great result. If you're getting 4 stars relatively consistently, you're going to get through this pretty quickly. Onwards to an all Cleveland comp. You can only bring 6 players in your div. So we did get an NC as our 7th, but all Clevelands is actually a very, very good comp. You have so much DPM that you're going to be able to deal with pretty much everything. Even that Musashi at the end, sure, you may go down to it, but that many Clevelands is going to kill it relatively quickly. But let's go through an entire battle here with the Cleveland, and I'm going to make some mistakes, don't you worry. Generally, you want to split up your focus between either side of the map. Overall, I found this to be a little bit less interesting. I really enjoyed the Arctic convoy and how you had to work with your teammates to escort that convoy all the way across the map. There were designated roles, there were different paths that you had to help out with. This one feels a little bit more like split up from your spawn and go after the objectives on your flank overall. And that's about it. Maybe meet back up at the end for the Musashi. It didn't feel as fun to me overall, but I think it's also a little bit easier because of that, because you're not needing quite so much team play. Now, if your entire team decides to not play the objectives, well, you're going to have a bad time regardless of the operation you're playing. This one overall, though, I think is going to be a little bit easier for you to get consistent wins on, especially as people understand it a little bit more. As I understand it, I think people were having a worse time with Arctic Convoy at the beginning before they understood how to play it. Here, even on the first day, we understood pretty easily what we needed to do, and I only expect it to get better as this operation goes on. Notice here I actually sacrificed my own progress in that secondary task, remaining outside of the illuminated areas. And that's to get the heal buff. I really do think someone needs to get that. That was another big problem with that one we lost outright. None of my teammates ever went for those heal buffs. Instead, everyone tried to remain outside of the flared areas. And that resulted in a bunch of cruisers that don't have heals without any healing against a Musashi, and almost never-ending small destroyers and cruisers that will chip damage you down. And that, I think, generally should be your strategy. Designate 1 or 2 people per side to get spotted, that's okay, and then go after those objectives and get those buffs. DD for that role is very good because oftentimes it's a little bit out of your way. Having a DD to go spot some of those objectives early allows the cruisers to get more of their DPM online sooner, getting your progress towards that primary goal of getting rid of those 4 enemy destroyers a lot sooner. You'll notice that typically the targets on the minimap are in similar locations. Sometimes it's a little bit more weighted to the right flank, sometimes a little more weighted to the left flank, but overall, there's always going to be two that are very deep across the map from where you spawn. Having a destroyer to get there a little bit earlier is so nice to get those spots on, because cruisers, battleships even, you can fire at those targets from a very long ways away. The issue is trying to get those spots. Now, of course, bringing a carrier could also do that, and I haven't mentioned that yet because I never ended up doing that, running a carrier, that is. That could be a good strategy. It also almost guarantees that you have one person on your team that never is illuminated by the flares or the oil spills, because the carrier is probably playing pretty far back. So that could be a good, interesting strategy as well. You'll have to let me know. I'm not a carrier player, so I didn't really want to play it here, because I was having fun with these surface ships overall. But now I want to talk about a couple of the remaining secondary tasks. It's really not too bad to even guarantee you're not inside these flared areas, at least one person. Even getting the buffs from the enemy destroyers isn't too bad to get alongside of it. A weird one, though, is ensure an enemy ship is destroyed by fire damage. When you have so much DPM, how do you guarantee fires ticking is the reason that an enemy ship went down? Especially if you're in a random comp without div mates collaborating, how do you guarantee it? It feels a little RNG based to me, and so here I am going to purely focus on trying to do that. Trying to get that last fire tick to be what takes down an enemy destroyer. And we're just going to result in doing too much damage to these guys. It's a little bit difficult to consciously go for that. Now, we're pushed up quite a lot, and what else is here now is the Musashi, pretty close range, and our other secondary task is to remain outside of 5 kilometers. Do I realize this yet while playing? No, I am hyper-focused on these fires. Trying to pop their damage control and trying to get some permanent fires lit. Here with the Shinonome, not getting the fire, and then we do too much damage. The Shiratsuyu, he's on a fire, he's about to tick out. One more, a couple more ticks, surely, right? 48? No, of course not, I don't get it. And now where are we? Well, we're pretty close to that Musashi. Yeah, I'm actually going to be the one that throws this game away. You can have a single person get too close to the Musashi. You can have people not focus on fire damage. Maybe they're trying to yoink some kills, and you won't get the fire damage achievement. It means that in the worst case scenario like that, you may get 3 or 2 stars only. Just barely. I mean, a millisecond sooner that I die, I don't actually fail that. But 4.9 kilometers from the Musashi, I was the reason that we did not get all 5 stars here. Now, my teammates are actually going to clutch this one out. Musashi, leaving that one as the last one to destroy by fire is a little bit hard because he also heals back so much HP. But my teammates do manage to collect an Akatsuki on fire and the Musashi just to flex on me. My div mates got one, and then the NC also got one. I couldn't do it, but fortunately my teammates could. And yet I still threw away 1 extra star here. Overall, this is an excellent operation. I had a blast playing it. This event is absolutely incredible. And these were my tips on how you can guarantee more stars out of your games. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.